Welcome to 3 Secrets for Creating Attention-Grabbing Safety Messages. My name is Marie-Claire Ross and I'm the Chief Enabling Officer at Digicast, and I'm also the author of the book Transform Your Safety Communication. Now, before I get into this webinar, just some quick housekeeping. For those of you who want a smooth webinar experience, and I'm guessing that's all of you, particularly if you've got a slow internet connection, you'll want to free up your bandwidth. So turn off any emails, Skype and Facebook, and that will ensure that you get a clear session. Now, I am so thrilled about this topic because I know that so many of you are passionate health, safety and environmental professionals who are so knowledgeable about safety compliance, and you want to make a real difference with safety in the workplace. You're great at the technical, but when it comes to promoting it, you struggle. And it's not a criticism. The reality is that the majority of you listening have never received this training. You've probably done a module on communication, but it's very much about how to run a meeting, write a report, or do a presentation. There's nothing about how to get buy-in and change behaviour. Yet your primary role is to influence others to buy into your company's vision of a strong safety culture. Being able to make safety meaningful to the workplace can have enormous consequences for your career and success as a safety professional, but also the safety results of the companies you work with. Now, recently I was talking to Julie Honore, the Managing Director of SafeSearch, which is one of the leading recruitment companies for safety personnel in Australia, Asia and the Middle East. And she said that communication skills are an essential skill set for safety professionals, and that organisations seek those that are not just technically qualified, but also those who can coach, influence and engage on safety. And during the recruitment process, her company screens out those who don't have the right communication skills. Essentially, there's really a very strong and growing demand now for the sophistication of safety professionals who can lead on safety. Now, just to get the record straight, what I mean by communication in this training is what information you generate to influence others about safety, and that can be either written or verbal. Now, to be clear, I'm not talking about spelling or using correct grammar. If you've had a decent education, hopefully you know how to spell or string a sentence together. The really important skill, and this is actually what's missing in education, is being able to coach, influence and engage in your communication. I mean, ask yourself, did your school English teacher teach you how to influence people to change their behaviour? Or what about the workplace training you've received in your career? Now, as the great Anthony Robbins says, information is not enough. Action is what unites every great person, every great success. Now, this is so true, particularly for safety. You have to know how to package information correctly so that you get people to take action. Inspiring people to take action is what separates an ordinary safety professional from a brilliant one. Every communication we make is an action, a cause set in motion. All communication has some kind of effect on ourselves and others. Yet, do you know how to fully use the power of your communication? Are you using it to inspire others to take the right actions? Effective communication is the best defense you have against accidents, and it has to be two-way. You have to be getting feedback from your teammates, and they have to be talking to you, and you have to be giving them information. And if not, this might be an area that needs improvement. Now, to be highly effective at workplace communication, you need to be able to use the following communication variables. Now, there are quite a lot, and I haven't listed all of them, but for written, you've got words, phrasing, pictures, colours, layout, and headlines. And verbal, it's facial expressions, tonality, body actions, physical actions, pitch, phrasing, posture, and even volume. Now, what's important to know is that we're moving away from the old industrial economy that cherished compliance to rules and regulations. It was all about forcing people to work safely, that whole command and control style where people were told what to do and punished if they misbehaved, and often blamed for having an accident. Today, as safety has become more sophisticated, we're moving full speed ahead towards a new connected economy that prizes achievement and connecting with other people. Safety is now all about creating an excellent safety culture that lies in management actively involving and encouraging employees to work safely. It's about senior management supporting safety initiatives so that the workplace understands why safety is important. Our computers, the internet, and social media have changed everything. Today, it's all about connection. And James Ruffton and Nathan Crutchfield in the book Safety Culture say that how well safety professionals are connected within the organisation's network impacts the quality and effectiveness of safety efforts. You have to ask yourself, how have you changed your communication style to match the short, clear message style of social media, such as Twitter and LinkedIn, or the Facebook and YouTube preference towards high-impact visuals? So while many of you love compliance, rules and regulations, which is all good and still required, the key to your career and being the best at what you do is translating rules and regulations into information that gets everyone in your company aligned with safety. It's about connecting people to safety being relevant in their day-to-day life and transforming complicated information into meaningful messages, particularly to a complacent audience that just couldn't care less about safety. Now, the world has changed. There are new concepts that you need to understand and old ideas you need to let go of quickly. And today, I'm going to give you the structure to create actionable workplace safety messages that inspire feedback from your staff. And I'm going to show you one step that you can make so that you have the tool towards creating actionable safety messages in any situation, whether you're writing an article for your company newsletter, creating new induction training content, or talking to a group of people on safety. And this is the thing, even if you've worked on your communication skills and you can write a mean report, or you believe you can present well at a Toolbox Talk meeting, being able to package safety information in a way that people can feel and take action upon improves what you do by about a 10% nuance. And it's that small nuance that makes such a big difference to your job, to your workmates and your employer, and to how much money you make. Learning how to change the safety mindset and getting everyone on that same page with safety provides you with the extra skills needed to really excel in your job and be highly desirable in the job market. It means you're worth so much more. It also makes your job so much more enjoyable because people actually want to talk to you about safety. Now, as safety communicators, or as change agents, which I like to refer to you, you do have one of the most meaningful jobs in the world. You enable people to go home from their job in one piece so they can be with their families. And it's ultimately your moral obligation as change agents to know how to talk about safety in a way that people understand and pay attention to. Otherwise, how are you going to keep people safe? You need to know how to offer people the opportunity to working safely and ultimately saying yes to their lives. You offer a moment of transformation. Now, the costs of poor safety communication are huge, and the world has seen some tragic industrial accidents over the last years, from the BP oil spill to the Texan explosion, where poor communication was a significant contributing factor. It destroys lives, often not just workers, but also the community, wildlife, and the environment. And the costs are massive in terms of legal action, fines, and rebuilding, and the emotional and financial impact to local families. And the company will often have trouble surviving because its reputation has been destroyed, as well as its finances. That means, people end up losing their jobs. So being able to be a master at safety communication is so important because it stops your company from being involved in a massive industrial accident or even a small one. It makes your workforce like you because you care about them. And to have influence, you need to be able to have the right communication skills that enable people to know, like, and trust you. And you get this right, and they'll do what you say. And it also means being able to get people to buy into your vision of a strong safety culture, which propels you into the top 5% of safety professionals, commanding the highest wage. And, it also brings your skills into the 21st century. So the number one skill of any business leader, without a doubt, is to be able to communicate their vision and communicate it with such congruency that you influence the way the masses feel and act. And the people who have shaped our lives and our cultures have been masters of communication. Think of Steve Jobs, Lee Iacocca, Gandhi, JFK, Martin Luther King Jr. So even if you're working with your company's leadership team to spread their safety vision or goals, it's still your job to influence senior management that they have the right safety goals. And then you have to convince the broader workforce. And that's what I offer for those that do my Fast Track Your Safety Communication Results course, is that you know and get confident with how to create meaningful safety messages that inspire feedback and action from your staff. And it's all through using a format formula. Even if you're not confident about writing or talking, this formula will help you say the right words to inspire action. So whether you're new to the safety profession, or maybe you've been one for years, or perhaps you're a safety consultant wanting to improve your results, or maybe you're in communication, or you're a senior manager wanting to know how to improve the safety communication skills of yourself or your team to improve alignment with your safety goals, you want to listen up because this is crucial to you. So you're in the right place if you're frustrated that the safety communication you create doesn't get shared around the company, that you find it gets blocked or diluted or gets delivered too late, or maybe there's so much corporate communication that it gets lost in a sea of clutter. You're spending more time than you'd like explaining safety information or training people because they don't understand. Or you're tired of people not taking safety information seriously and they're just not being accountable. Or you find that people don't take action. Nothing changes. The safety mindset remains the same. Or you're open to new ideas and way of doing things, and you believe that new knowledge will improve your performance and you want to excel in your career. You're ready to let go of old ideas. Well, congratulations, you're in the right place, and today I'm going to take you through a really, really comprehensive training session. So specifically today what we're going to cover is what is getting attention, why does it matter, 3 secrets to creating attention-grabbing safety messages. And this is part of the first step from the Fast Track Your Safety Communication Results program. And I'm going to give you a lot to run with today. And how you can easily create meaningful safety messages that inspire action using the 4-step Aura communication blueprint. And here I'll give you a 4-step sequence to fast track you towards being a key communicator in your organization. And then the 5th one, I've just thrown this today for this webinar. I'm going to see if I have time to do a safety communication renovation where I'm just going to show you some little things and improvements that you can do to improve an example of a safety article that I've been given by someone. So I'll teach you as much as I can in the limited time we have together. And before we conclude, and for those of you who want to take it further, before I finish up, I promise to show you how to get more. And I'm also going to tell you a little secret. I do have a special free bonus offer that I'll reveal later, so stay tuned for that one. Now, there is a system and a set of stages that break down how creating actionable safety messages can be possible for you. It's not random. There are steps that make it easier for you to achieve safety excellence through inspiring and motivating safety communication. And as safety professionals, I know you like your systems, and there's a good reason for that, because what does a system do? It'll save yourself some time, energy, and money. And the good news is that selling safety to your audience doesn't require unique talent. It's a system, a formula. All the ads you see on TV follow a variety of formulas, and the same with magazine ads. And I just want to quickly tell you a story about how I developed my systems around safety communication, because yes, you'll be pleased to know I've got a system. So for those of you who don't know me, I started my career as a market researcher almost 20 years ago, and I learned that if I was to quickly succeed, I needed to learn how to write simply and directly. After all, when you're analysing large streams of data and interview transcripts, being able to communicate those results in an engaging manner that doesn't make people yawn is a major accomplishment. And I was very lucky that I got to work on a range of research projects, working alongside ad agencies and communication agencies to test how well messages were being communicated. And I did a lot of very large campaign testing, from health communication programs to even industrial communication. It was all about getting consumers and businesses to change their behaviour. And you know, some of the scariest presentations I've ever had to do were in front of time-poor ad executives and CEOs and the senior leadership team of the Victorian state government when Jeff Kennett was in power. And for any of you who aren't aware of Jeff Kennett, he used to be the Premier of Victoria many years ago, and he was renowned for having a short temper and shouting at people if he was unhappy. He also had really high standards, and his chief of staff were just as scary as him, and I'm proud to say I left Parliament House unscathed after I presented our research findings and insights, unlike some of my other poor colleagues. And that was actually my career highlight in market research, to not have Jeff Kennett yell at me. I then had a career change where I began writing scripts and producing videos at Digicast, which I've actually run now for 14 years, and I began to work with large industrial companies to produce safety training videos. And I also worked with a lot of companies on their marketing and creating marketing videos, and I even had the pleasure of directing Geoffrey Rush And he's the guy that studying the King's Speech, Pirates of the Caribbean, and Shine. And I tell you, I was actually really nervous. And I thought, how can I direct Jeffrey Rush? He's a Hollywood actor. But, he was amazing. He appreciated direction. He was actually easier to direct than some senior managers and CEOs I've worked with. But then when you think about it, it all makes sense because people who are really good at what they do at the top of their field are always open to new ways of doing things, of learning and receiving feedback. They're always open to advice. And I was in America recently studying, and what one of my mentors reminded me is that you can't expect your employees to change their behaviour if you don't. If you want action, if you want people to take action, you also have to take action. And if you want to train people, you also have to get trained by other people. And if you want to coach people, you also have to be open to coaching. And the Greek word idiot actually means someone who's unable to learn from others. And even someone like Jeffrey Rush knows that if you want to be a great actor, you have to keep being open to learning from different people. So over the past 15 years, I've worked with over 65 medium to large size organisations. And just to give you a little sample, I've worked with companies like Incitec Pivot, who makes fertilisers all around the world, Pacific Aluminium, which is owned by Rio Tinto, a big mining company, Domaine Chandon, which make beautiful French-style wines, Murray Goulburn, who produces milk, CSR Viridian, who manufacture glass, Country Fire Authority, who have 40,000 volunteer fire workers. And I've also worked with various city councils and government departments. I can't say that word. And it's through working with these companies and figuring out what works and what doesn't that's actually enabled me to be able to design, test, and create an effective system to enable safety communicators to get everyone on board with safety. Now, why I developed this system was, I'm going to be honest and say I was really stunned when I started working with companies and how they wrote their internal communication, especially along safety. It's all very wordy and complicated and really quite unfriendly. And, with all the training documents that I've had to read through over the years, I have to say that I really haven't been impressed with any of them. They're really quite poor. And a real shock for me was I was working with a large Australian company that had a high injury rate. And just before we were set to work with them, the project was put on hold when one of their shipping contractors that worked on site had a fatality. And it was pretty horrendous. The guy had a young family and he just momentarily lost attention. And when I rang my client about filming, literally the next day, I didn't know what had happened, but I knew there was something wrong because when I rang, he just sounded terrible, and so did everyone else in the office. So the job got postponed, and when I came in a few weeks later to start work, I was actually quite appalled by the quality of the training documents. Just awful, very technical. They spoke down to people. That was so big and mind-numbingly dull. And with the memory of the fatality still in my mind, I just really wanted to do everything I could to make a difference. And I could tell that the company I worked for really was ready for change, thankfully. And I was quite nervous about improving the safety training materials. I just didn't want a fatality to occur again, and I did everything I could to write the information in a more friendly, approachable manner that really respected employees and contractors and focused on the importance of a safe workplace. And quite honestly, it wasn't an easy task for me at the time because I had a 4-week-old baby and a 2-year-old, and I was sleep deprived, but oh my gosh, I was going to do everything I could to really make a difference. And the result ended up being a series of isolation videos. And what we created was very different to what they'd ever had before. And don't get me wrong, they'd had safety training videos made before. And the company did a pre and post survey of how our training videos performed. And what they found was that they pretty much instantly improved the engagement of staff on safety issues, but also measurably reduced injuries. And almost overnight, morale and productivity improved. And the safety manager told me there's no mystery behind procedures. Everyone knows now what to do, when before they'd all been told different ways to do procedures. And staff wasted so much time arguing about the best way to do things. And we're very blessed that with this training video, we actually won the award from LearnX for best use of training in a video. Now, this was actually a life-defining moment for me. It was like the sun finally came out after the darkness and confusion, because after being so shocked at the consequences of a workplace fatality, I could actually see the benefits of the work that I actually do. And I actually felt like I was making a real difference to the world as I realised I could actually save lives through clear communication. So from that moment, I madly studied as much as I could about communication, learning about visuals and the psychology of influence, neuroscience, workplace leadership and culture. And this day and age, you have to keep learning so you don't fall behind. And I read on average 1 book a fortnight, but I know that just reading books isn't enough. It's a mistake to think that a book is everything you need. And it's through working with experts and learning from them that you save time, but you get the best information. And being able to ask some questions and getting them to look at your work is invaluable. Otherwise, you can just keep trying stuff and never get results, or you give up too early. Now, I'm going to confess that I've been spending thousands and thousands of dollars on my education and working a lot with international experts. And this year I've spent close to 70 grand on my education, and I've already travelled to America twice this year, and I'm going back in September for courses. These are all educational expenses, which my accountant loves. So, I was really concerned about the cost, and I do have a young family, and I'm running a business, and I've got a lot on my plate, and the study's immense, but I know the end result will be worth it. And I know that if I want to help my clients take their safety communication to the next level, I have to take the next step. If you want people to take action, you've got to take action. So after working with a steel-making manufacturer, I then started working a lot more with safety professionals, and I could just see how much they struggled to communicate about safety. And they kept asking me to help them, so I really started to look at what I do and how to break it all down and give them some tips. And that's how I created the Sell-Safe system, by trying to help my clients get their messages out. It all started with trying to improve induction training. Now, some of you might be readers of my blog, The Workplace Communicator, which I've been writing weekly information on safety communication and leadership for close to 5 years. It's got actually over 8,000 people now reading it a month. And through my blog, I've been interviewed on Sky Business Channel about workplace communication and induction, and also BRW, or Business Review Weekly. And I talk about the safe communication formula in my book, Transform Your Safety Communication. And I just want to give a bit of a shout out to all my wonderful readers of my book on this webinar, because I want to thank you for continually improving your safety communication skills and wanting to learn more and taking time to add to your knowledge by listening in. You won't be disappointed. I've got so much more information to share today that's not in the book. My book was only launched in January this year, but it's already selling in 33 countries around the world, and it's been recommended by IOSH in SHP online, and also their hard copy magazine in the UK. Phil Lovelock from Safety in Action has confessed that he has a copy on his book that he refers on his desk that he refers to. Richard Hawke mentioned it in his newsletter, Safety Stuff. James Ruffton and Nathan Crutchfield. Kevin Jones, who runs the Safety at Work blog, also did a little review on it. And it's also been mentioned in Industrial Safety and Hygiene News in the US. And just this month, American Society of Safety Engineers, America, printed a really positive. I've actually been really grateful that Jeffrey Camplin really enjoyed my book and actually pushed for the magazine to do the review, because I don't often do them. So since launching my book, I've developed the Aura communication blueprint to make it really easy for safety professionals, because it's really action that's so important with what you do. And I've turned that into a course because I found that even though people can get some easy tips on how to improve their safety communication, it's practicing all the elements and getting feedback that gives them the best results. And it's hard to make improvement in your communication if you don't have someone coaching you and advising. And isn't that what you do? Coach people to improve their safety? What results would your employees get if you got them to read safety information and left them to it? It wouldn't work. But you know that as safety professionals. I'm just preaching to the converted, right? Now, I have so much valuable information to share with you in this training. I've only got 90 minutes with you, but we'll jump straight in now to step 1 of my 5-step system. There's still so much more to learn on this topic, and I promise I'll show you a way how you can get more support. Okay, now what is getting attention? You can think of getting attention as like a spark plug igniting fuel to start an engine. Attention starts the motor of your brain. Once the brain is aware that a poor safety behaviour is being undertaken incorrectly, it can then start to work on it to improve. Now, attention has enormous catalytic properties in changing safety behaviour, and it provides a powerful energy for change. And in the book Flow by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, he describes attention as an energy that without it, no work can be done. Attention is so important that it's actually our most critical tool when it comes to improving the quality of our life. And it's the first step that I teach in the 4-step Aura communication blueprint, because without it, people can't take action on your messages. Now, one mistake I see safety professionals do is that they get all excited about a new safety process they've devised, so they go up and start telling a workmate who might be busy filling out a form or using a machine, and The safety guy or gal expects them to be so fascinated and just stop what they're doing and listen, but this never works. You've got to get people's attention first. You need to make it relevant to them, and you can't just kind of throw up on people with your information. And if you're on the receiving end, sometimes it does feel like that. So the first thing is to ignite that spark plug, and then once the engine is running, you get into more detail. So why is getting attention so important? Well, if you don't know this, you'll forever be making, let's be honest here, boring safety communication that people just aren't interested in. And it will keep you stuck in writing safety messages that actually repel safety from being meaningful to people. And it's the key to drawing people into finding out more and wanting to learn. Now, without incorporating attention techniques into your communication, you'll actually have trouble getting people to listen or read. And you'll just keep creating the same old content that, it just gets ignored. But it also works against, and it stops changing people's safety behaviour, but it also works against how the brain processes information, because our brain relies on past patterns to know what to do. Our brains actually use pre-recorded patterns to make sense of our experience and to decide whether something is interesting or boring. And our thinking machines are actually activated when something novel or unusual occurs so that we can learn for the future. The good news is once you get attention, you stand a chance of breaking up old patterns and creating new ones. But the key is to get full 100% attention in order to encourage the brain to learn so that patterns can be updated with new information. In fact, this is such an important part of our biological design that our brains are actually hardwired to seek out novelty and challenges. So when our mind stops to attention, it actually releases the feel-good hormone dopamine, which gives your brain a boost of energy to rise to the challenge of let's figure this out mode. Yet few safety professionals actually think about how to get people's attention. When was the last time you thought, how do I get people's attention on this? It's very easy to get into that mode where we just start writing and talking and we think that's enough, but it's not. The brain will ignore the information unless you make it more attention grabbing. So how do you get attention? Well, there are 3 secrets to getting attention on safety messages. And before I get into them all, what I need to do is just sort of give you a little bit of a summary about how the brain works, because this is actually really important. So we experience life through receiving information about the environment through specialized receptors and sense organs that pick up taste, smell, visual and feeling and hearing information. All these stimuli are then transmitted to the brain. And essentially throughout our day, we're bombarded with lots of stimulus, from dogs barking, neighbours yelling, air conditioners humming, changes in temperature, different smells coming out of the kitchen. And our brain has learnt to adapt to our environment by filtering out what we don't need to avoid information overload. And this is actually to run the brain more efficiently. Otherwise, we'd be in survival mode trying to work out how to walk and what to eat. But instead of doing this, we can write poetry, surf the internet, and create, rather than just surviving and managing all that stimuli that's constantly coming to us. Our brains are constantly devising ways to save effort, so it distorts, deletes, and generalizes the electrical signals and filters them into an internal representation. Now, these internal representations become either habits or patterns of information for us to remember. They're shortcuts for the brain to understand external information. Essentially, the brain screens out what it doesn't need and stores the info it does into packets of information. So say you've decided that you want a new car and it has to be red. Now, you'll find that every time you'll go out, you'll literally start to see red cars everywhere, and you'll be surprised at how popular they are. And the same goes if you're deciding on a particular model of car. And this is because in the past, your brain filtered out red cars because it had other things to focus on. So now that you've told your brain that you're interested in red cars, the filter is removed and the invisible becomes visible. So you see red cars everywhere because your brain was deleting, it's deleting other colours. Now, psychologists dub this a scotoma effect, and scotoma means a mental blind spot or a gap in the field of vision. So it means that if you're not looking for red cars, your brain will delete it from your reality by creating a scotoma, which means you're blind to red cars. Now, as the conscious mind is unable to work with all the signals it receives, our internal representation of how we experience an event isn't precisely what occurred. Instead, it's more of a tailored representation. So this means that human perception varies greatly, and it's why police officers get conflicting stories from witnesses in an accident or robbery. And that's why when you're dealing with groups of people that you're talking to, say senior managers or production managers, you need to write or talk communication that targets their needs and experiences. And what they experience and see at work differs from those in other departments or job titles. And it's very difficult to write generalized information for everyone. So thankfully at a workplace, you've got clear segments, job departments, staff roles that you can clearly target. And when you're writing a particular safety campaign, you're writing it for scores of workers who aren't at that time particularly interested in, let's say, ladder safety, because they've deleted it from their brain because they're more concerned about why their teenager is skipping school. So what gets our attention? Well, there are three things that we need to focus on. It's our memory or perception of how things are, interest, and awareness. So our brains constantly scan the sensory horizon, continually processing whether or not events are important enough to notice. And every day we use previous experience or memory to drive awareness of what's important or not in our environment. And we create patterns or constructs from our everyday life to help us quickly adapt to what's around us. So we have to, otherwise we'll get overwhelmed. And these patterns are the keys to the way a person processes information. They also provide the structure that govern what we pay attention to and how much we make sense of our experiences based on whether we decide something is interesting or dull. So every bit of information that appears in our life, our brains attach emotion and meaning to it. And that's the difference between our brains and a computer. Computers don't have emotions. They can't add emotional data. So to communicate effectively with people, you have to understand their programs. And it's only then that you're able to break their patterns and insert new ones to change behavior. So how do you get around this clever brain filtering to get people's attention? Well, our brains conserve as much power as they can, but of course there's one problem that can occur when our brains are working in automatic mode. We can miss something important, such as a speeding car coming towards us. Now, our brains are designed to be aware of changes, and a theory behind this is because when we used to roam the wilds of the African savannah, we had to constantly assess the environment for possible danger and to ensure that we were safe. And to this day, we're still finely tuned to assess potential threats. In fact, biologically, we are designed to grow and learn, and we have a constant desire for newness and attention. And the cells in our body demand that we change. After all, they do regenerate every couple of days. And so while our brains are hardwired to seek challenge and novelty, even if you have everything in life that you want, if you're lucky to have all the money you need and love and respect, life can actually feel monotonous and disengaged if we don't have novelty. Our brains require that we engage and learn. And our brains require more processing power in the front, which is the forward-looking part. And this is an important drive that pushes us into the future. We only notice things when something changes, such as the air conditioner turns off, a house alarm starts screeching, or a light turns on. And that's why advertising that features novel, unfamiliar, and unpredictable stimuli grabs our attention, because you've got a button. Our brains are activated when something new or different occurs. And in my book, Transform Your Safety Communication, on pages 43 to 44, I refer to the fact that emotion gets our attention. Any event that heightens our emotions is much better remembered than a neutral activity. And we remember emotional information more. So if you look back at your life, it's the emotional events that you can remember. You can remember the feeling, but not so much the detail. So your first kiss, your wedding day, even the birth of your children. So in particular, there are three emotions that you need to leverage in your safety communication to make your safety messages sticky. You want to give people a surprise, induce fear, or provide interest through fascinating and unusual information. But these all don't work the same, so what I want to do now is go through each of these in more detail. Now, the first one is surprising your audience, and surprise happens when an event doesn't match what we expect or predicted would happen. Now, what occurs is not anticipated, so that means that our brain has to rethink its understanding of the world. Now, how surprise works is our brain manages how it experiences life through making an educated guess as to what comes next and then to see if we're right. And this constant forecasting process allows us to make the right decision as to our next move. Now, remember, our brain uses patterns based on memory to predict what's going to happen next. So you could think of surprise as a momentary emergency override that renders us speechless while we try to process what happened. And what's so handy with generating surprise is that it prompts us to hunt for underlying triggers, to imagine other potentials so that we can avoid such a surprise again. And it's this process that helps us to remember information. And when it comes to creating memorable safety campaigns, it's the unexpected ideas that create surprise that stay in our memory and grab our attention. And this is when people start to consider changing their behaviour. And this is really quite magical. So when something unusual happens, our brain pays attention to learn from it so that patterns can be updated and with new information. Now, when it comes to changing behaviours on a large scale, advertising campaigns have been using the element of surprise to really get people to rethink about things, particularly safety. And now we don't have time to watch TV ad examples, but what I'm going to do is provide you with a link at the end so you can actually watch them after the webinar. Now, a famous ad that I'd like to tell you about is a US commercial that literally motivated thousands of people to wear their safety belts, which was no mean feat. Now, with this ad called the Enclave ad, it starts out as a routine-looking family car TV ad where we hear about all these amazing features about this minivan that's perfect from a family, from cup holders that heat up and from a sunroof that you can change, and it just seems like a normal car ad. And then all of a sudden we're surprised when it's involved in quite a horrific car accident, and it actually appears that a child has quite possibly died. And this ad is extremely powerful because it really does shock us, because our patterns of what we predicted were just completely thrown in disarray. And when our guessing machine fails, surprise grabs our attention so that we can learn for the future. So what actually appeared to be a normal car ad was really an incredibly strong message to wear safety belts. Now, how do you create surprise, you might be asking? Well, a mistake that I see a lot with safety professionals is that they do use surprise, but they use it the wrong way. So they might be off topic, or in some cases inappropriate. Most of the time, just not even that surprising. And sometimes it's a mistake to think that you can just incorporate being surprising without really knowing or having the steps to do that. And what I found quite interesting is when I used to work in market research and test advertising campaigns in focus groups, we would be testing how surprising ads were, and oftentimes I'd have to go to the ad agency and say, no, this didn't work, it wasn't surprising, you better do that one again. So these are people that are doing it all the time. It is quite difficult, but to make it easy for you, I have put together 5 strategies for creating mystery and intrigue. Now, the first one is ask a question that tests people what people think they know. Show people something different to what they expect. Use the power of incompletion. Use the power of uncertainty, and use humour. Now let's go through the first one. Ask a question that tests people what they think they know. Now, it's really important to start working out the gaps in knowledge so you can formulate the right questions to engage, and also by getting worker input, they'll have more ownership and interest in the topic. Interest develops from gaps in knowledge. Now, to convince people to listen to your message, you need to highlight some information that people didn't know they didn't know. And this means talking to people about what they know before you start working out this question. Now, by asking a question about something that people don't know, but they know they should, you get people's attention. Now, television programs do this extremely well. Their teaser promotional ads tend to focus on questions that really get your attention to find out more. And one that I heard recently that actually grabbed my attention, and it's pretty hard to get mine, I have to confess, is, do you know which locations in Australia are at risk of sinkholes? Because our brains are literally like a big computer that's set to work to answer any question of it. So I, of course, went, wow, I need to know. Actually, I didn't actually end up watching the television program, but that's just me. Now, ask us a question and we want to know the answer. Now, the benefits of this, there are multiple. And they are, by thinking about the question, people when they have their answer, they're actually more likely to remember it, because the more we think about information, the more it sticks. It can also be used to change viewpoints, and it can encourage people to take information more seriously. And one of my favourites with this one is that if people believe they came up with the answer themselves, they're actually more likely to believe it and do what they're told, as long as they think they're coming up with it and someone hasn't told them. It's quite interesting how humans work. Now, remember, the best types of questions get people to focus on the future. And what I always say is that communication must reflect feedback, not failure. You must focus on the positive, not the negative. Now, the second strategy in getting surprise is show people something different to what they expect. Now, when it comes to creating your campaign, you need to look at what information you can use to create surprise. Avoid common sense. Instead, use common sense to tell your message. Uncommon sense, sorry. And this is what a lot of safety communicators get wrong. So when you do your research on a topic, look out for surprising information and compare it to something that really shows the hidden dangers or hidden messages that people just don't consider. It's all about contrasting the information to get surprise. And remember, the brain expects the world to work due to its memory of patterns. So you can surprise it by creating a contrast to what it normally expects. Now, this is actually a really important concept to get, and if it's the only one that you remember today from this webinar, then I've done my job well. Now, there are 3 ways to contrast that really work well, and they are consequences, extreme replacement, and time. And I'll go through each of those now. Now, consequences is where you show a safety behaviour that's being performed under unusual or exaggerated circumstances. Now, it needs to show the implications of either doing or not doing the recommendation advocated. And by showing an unrealistic situation, it actually helps to emphasize safety behaviors that are dangerous or inappropriate. Now, an example of this that I actually like is the WorkSafe ad pain game worker, where we see a construction worker who's unable to access the scissor lift, and he decides to take a shortcut by creating a makeshift ladder with a paint can and a box. While drilling, a game show host and an attendant magically appear, asking him to spin the wheel on the pain game. And it's a great way of showing surprise, because we didn't expect a game show to appear on a construction site, and a metaphor to explain that taking a shortcut really is a potential lottery. We then see him injured, which are the consequences. Now, if you want to use this, you'll need to think about the process that you want to bring awareness to and the really extreme consequences you can make a contrast. You've got to make sure it's really surprising. Now, this is a great example of a method to really get people's attention at the workplace, but everyone's different and you need different strategies. So this is great for a toolbox talk or a safety article or a poster, but would it work if you needed to sell safety to your CEO or executive general manager? Nah, of course not. I wouldn't recommend it for them. How would you sell safety to them? Well, you need a totally different approach. It's really important that you know how to get the attention of senior leaders in a meeting. And what I'm teaching you in this webinar are mostly skills for average employees. Senior leadership employees are totally different, but I teach other things that cover that. Now, the next one's extreme replacement, and this is when a key attribute of your safety messages are replaced with something different. So it often includes an extreme replacement of what the viewer would expect. An example of this is an extreme analogy, and is this picture that I've made of the shark on stairs. As you can see, it's a pretty easy concept to make, easy to do, and I use this for 3 points of contact. Now, everyone expects to see a person walking down the stairs holding the rail when talking about 3 points of contact. But if you want to grab people's attention, nah, not a good attention grabber. It's too expected, particularly people are learning this year after year and being reminded. You need to contrast it to something different. Now, what I found really interesting was when I was doing my research on falling downstairs, more people fall downstairs than being bitten by a shark. Now, in Australia, we're always kind of paranoid about going to the water and being eaten by a shark, but the chances of it are incredibly slim. We're more likely to hurt ourselves at home or at work on the stairs. So to me, that was a really good contrast to use. So to do an article on this, I used that to draw people in. Of course, I still did use the 3 points of contact photo, because I really wanted to show the right way of doing it and provided instructions around that. And of course, visuals are important for that as well. Now, one mistake I see a lot of safety professionals make is that they copy this idea of mine. And they don't make the extreme replacement link strong enough. The contrast just isn't there. They just use a random dangerous animal, but just don't tie it in well enough, so it gets lost. So that's something to be careful of. You've really got to tie it in well. Now, to use this template, you'll need to find out more about why your employees don't believe there is a danger and really provide a concept that would be the extreme of that. Flip their beliefs upside down. Now, the next one is the time template. This style shows the outcome of using or not using a safety device, which is dramatized by a leap in time that shows the long-term consequences. Now, this really only works if you're using video. I'm going to put a disclaimer in for this one, and we've actually used it for a client where they actually had a near miss, where someone actually almost died. He got, I think, partially electrocuted from memory now. And what we did was do a mock-up of the accident, but also had all the people involved talking about the experience and how they got impacted. And we went back in time. Now, I can't show you that one, but one you can see is the young worker ad. Now, this is a really great ad. There's a series of them. It's gone back on television. Now, in this said, we go back in time from the present moment to see a young woman with a deformed eye waving at her children in the pool, getting married, and then we watch her in front of the mirror trying to conceal her facial burns. And towards the end, we watch the dreadful workplace accident occur that severely injured her face. And it ends with a powerful call to action: if you're not sure, ask. And this template is really the most extreme of all the templates. It's very highly fear-based. So you've got to be really careful with this style. You've got to make sure that if you are showing something that is quite scary, that you really give people clear steps on avoiding the danger. And I have to admit, even though I've seen the young worker ad many times, I close my eyes for the actual accident. It's too scary for me. Okay, so the next one is incompletion. Now, people hate incompletion, and they stick around and keep listening or watching to get complete information. So you never want to give people full information. So learning how to use incompletion effectively will keep your audience's attention. It's particularly important for training or doing a talk. Now, not knowing something is almost like needing to sneeze, but you just can't. The knowledge gap metaphorically creates discomfort that we need to fill as soon as we can. Now, I'll just go through some ideas that you can easily incorporate into your safety communication as soon as this webinar is over. So the first one is never show a slide with all the information. So doing a presentation is a great time to use the power of incompletion and make sure each point appears as you say it. Never leave people to read it all while you talk, because I know that when I've gone to safety presentations and someone's like just thrown up on their slide and given me lots of information, I don't listen to what they say. I just read, which is terrible. I'm not learning that way. You can also create your content with intrigue, so get people to fill it in, and the brain will want to know what it is and will want to stick around. And then the other one is include a mystery. So you might want to have 4 steps, but you only talk about 3. And you come to the final one later. And to give you an example, I was doing this training course at the end of last year, and the instructor came out from London to teach it. It was quite an expensive course, I have to confess. And on the first day, he went through 7 steps. Well, he went through 6 steps out of 7, so 1 was missed in the middle. And I made the mistake of going up to just talking to him at the end of the class and saying, oh, by the way, when are we going to hear about step 6? And he said, oh, you don't like incompletion, and which made me feel bad. But I've since discovered it's quite a normal human trait. And he said, oh, I'll be teaching it in the morning. I just want to make sure everyone turns up in the morning. Now, fair enough, it was a Saturday morning the next day, but it was an expensive class. So I was very surprised he was fearful that people wouldn't turn up. But it was an interesting little thing that he did. Now, an easier way to do it is you might want to start with a question at the start of a talk and get people to tell you their answer at the end. Now, the other one that I like to use is the power of uncertainty, and we use this a lot with clients. It's the need to incorporate stories, because the key to great storytelling is uncertainty, because stories raise questions in the mind of the audience. You want people to think, well, where's this going? And you don't want to tell a predictable story or give away the ending, because why would people stick around if they know the answer? Now, this is actually quite a big topic in itself, and I actually provide my advanced students with a template on how to create attention-grabbing stories, and that's about a 90-minute class for that alone. So we don't have time for that today, but here's a way to get you started. I want you to start incorporating stories in your toolbox talks and safety safety articles. Now, this is the hallmark of a great communicator. You want to use them at the start of the talk, and they're particularly powerful if you take people on a journey from the problem to the solution. It would make such a big difference. Now, the final one in getting surprised is using humour. Now, humour is great because it's unexpected, and it's easy to get people to make decisions when they're in a good state, particularly new ones. In a bad state, people make decisions controlled by fears, and humour can be very handy to getting people into the right mood so that they're open to change. Now, you can intrigue people by being, saying, or doing something different than what they expected. And according to research by Millward Brown, almost half of all television advertising uses some form of humour. Makes ads more involving, memorable, and enjoyable. So when it comes to communication, the relationship with humour is not so straightforward. And I say that with a slight warning because there are times to use it and there are times not to. And it all depends on how funny you are and your audience. Sometimes the audience likes humour and sometimes it doesn't. And personally, I've had an interesting experience where I was doing a presentation in America last year. In fact, I did 2 of them to the same audience at different times, a few months apart. And the first time I did it, I somehow fluked to be funny. I just did a funny presentation. And the next time I did it, I was serious. And the audience, because they had seen me present before, were disappointed. They're expecting me to be funny. But this is the thing, you can't force funny. And if I'd forced it when I wasn't in a funny mood, it would have just sounded awful. So, you know, if you don't use humour right, it can really hurt your message. So the humour must be closely related to the key message as well, otherwise it just distracts and it's not effective. So to make humour work, you want to make sure that the subject matter is universal, something that everyone understands. You know, for example, starting school or starting a new job. The subject matter can't be offensive or taboo, so avoid any sexual jokes or racial things. Don't want to be mean about people either. The humour is ideally visually based rather than relying on something that might be lost in translation. And you can add humour with funny facial expressions, which is what I'm doing now. And you can also poke fun at yourself or the organisation, and that's a favourite of many people. And you can also use funny quotes. Now, I've collected a few, but personally I don't do this myself because it's not the sort of humour I can do, but it might be the sort of thing that you might be doing. And, you know, one thing that I saw that I thought would be good for a meeting was, how many people have telekinetic powers? Raise my hand. And you can also collect funny anecdotes from around the workplace. So there are always little funny stories that people have. So you want to keep your ears open for that and, you know, use them, particularly if they're sort of cute little stories about people. It's sort of a way of connecting everyone, and it can actually show that people have got a bit of personality and also make them like you because you're sort of showing them in a positive light. Okay, so I've just shown you some powerful strategies about how to get surprised that you won't have been taught before. And now we'll go into the second secret, which is about using fear. Now, the power of fear. Fear in communication can be highly effective, but only if you give specific steps so that people know how to avoid the threat. People need to believe the action will adequately remove the danger and that they can easily perform the action required. Now, if you just scare people without advising them on how to sidestep the risk, fear appeals can backfire, which can lead to a denial of its existence. And this results in inertia that literally makes people too scared to take any action. So you want to avoid that at all costs. Now, a common mistake a lot of safety professionals make is using gory visuals or even reading through a list of how people died at the workplace. Now, many safety professionals tell me that's how you get attention, and I wanted to let you know that this really is an old concept, and I know people who really like to defend using fear, but I want you to get over using it the wrong way. It might have worked 10 years ago, you know, gosh, it might have even worked 20, but it's really using its power. Always keep in the back of your mind that communication must reflect feedback, not failure. It's about using positive language, not negative. And one of the big issues with using fear is that it's a really, really manipulative way to get attention and change behaviour. It produces short-term results, and long-term it really does work against you. Now, the interesting thing about fear is that whether it's real or perceived, if you think of a bank robber, if he goes in with a banana camouflaged as a gun, he'll still get jail time if he gets caught. because fear motivates us so well that we'd comply with his demands. But when you think about it logically, he couldn't have done anything to hurt anyone. But it still creates so much fear and damage in people just by doing that. Now, fear is used in a lot of public service ads, and it's also political ads, and it's like putting the proverbial gun to your head. And I'm totally against using fear. I get annoyed if I see an ad on TV that tells mums they're bad for letting bacteria into the house and risking the health of their children, and that to be a good mum you need to be using antibacterial soaps and wipes on everything. And, this is so wrong. Germs are good for kids, build up their immune systems, reduce allergies and all that stuff. But this is what they do. It's just a highly manipulative way, and it's blaming and shaming, and, it's just awful. But, what I want you to know is that fear can actually be used for good, because it is still a very powerful way of getting people to comply. But I like to use it in a positive way. Because when it comes to fear, what humans are really trying to do is minimize loss aversion. So research shows that people actually dislike losing more than they like winning. So the fear of loss is a powerful motivator to move people away from a danger. So for example, use fear if you find that people are moving away from pain subconsciously. If you find that people are fearful about hurting their hands at work, then you'd remind them about the need to wear gloves by focusing on the pain words that you use when mentioning their fears about hand injuries. And you also want to use fear when it's more of an emotional feeling that they're experiencing that's much deeper than a fear of loss. So when it could be used to motivate, to inspire those who are stuck and don't know how to move forward, when it's more about the person and who they are rather than the company and what they want, then you can turn it into an aspirational message. Now, this is more for bigger health and safety goals, when you're leading people to a bigger vision and you want more widespread change. So for example, workplace wellness programs, when you want people to, start exercising and be healthy. But to get change, you have to show them where they are and where they need to be. Now, this is actually something I've been using and testing with my clients for over 10 years now, and working out what motivates in terms of pain and showing how that pain is affecting results. Because often people don't realize they're in pain. You have to make them aware of it and how to get out of it. And it's a really good way of getting them to focus on the issue at hand. Now, a mistake many safety professionals can often make is that they focus on the wrong pains, or pains that people don't matter much to people. And sometimes people don't even realize that that pain is actually occurring to them. And you need to make them aware of that. Or sometimes the processes that are being used to make it clear just actually make it even worse. Now, there's an interesting story of a car manufacturer in the US that had injuries every week because employees were refusing to wear both safety goggles and gloves, despite doing dangerous welding work. Now, can you imagine 950 male welders all being macho and refusing to wear their PPE? Well, they were in pain, but they didn't know it. It was more important for them to act cool and risk injury. Now, when you have a workforce like that, then it's time to work out the pain points. You have to dig deep because they're unconscious. And this workplace had a complete turnaround once their complicated procedures were made simple. But this was only achieved after the pain was made clear for all to see. And we're talking psychological pain here, not physical. There is a difference. So use fear if you find that people are moving away from pain subconsciously. Then you can remind them of why they need to do something using their pain words. And when it comes to fear, there are 3 ways to use it. Let people know what they stand to lose by giving them clear steps on how to avoid a threat. Use it to let people know when they're in pain and they don't know it, and show how they can get out of it. And this is good for a particular process or behaviour. And also use it to help people see where they are and where they want to be. Aspirational. This is really great for workplace wellness programs and general health. Now, the final secret I want to go through is keep things interesting. New, interesting information that we haven't heard before often gets our attention. Now, remember that our brains are designed to keep learning and growing. And so always start with simple, stripped down information. Now, one way to keep things interesting is self-interest, and humans are very much motivated by the self. And self-interest is one of the biggest human motivators of all time. And you want to tap into this by getting into the mindset of your target audience. So while writing, keep asking yourself all the time, so what? What's in it for me? And it's all about getting in tune with the way your audience thinks and being in harmony with their mindset. Now, when you're writing, I recommend talking in the second person and using you and your. Make the person reading your material feel like you're talking to them. Now, this way, they can actually picture themselves doing something. It provides an internal representation. You know, making safety meaningful doesn't require unique talent. It's a system, a formula. Influencing other people to work safely doesn't require you to be special. It's not about personality, it's not about being super confident, and it's not about being manipulative. You've just got to apply the structure, the formula. So, would you like to see my exact formula, the four steps to fast track you to being a key safety communicator in your organisation? You know, I've seen people spend lots of time and money trying to work this out, even large companies that use them, that have, you know, even large companies that use communication agencies and even market research companies to help them just don't know this. And you can think of it as a communication system to help you create communication that's really consistent company-wide. Excuse me. And the beauty is, with this communication blueprint, once you've learned it, you can always follow it. It takes you step by step through what you need to do to get people to listen to you. And all you have to do is plug in your information into a formula and off you go. Now, the important thing to know is that you have to get every step in the process in the right order. It's like baking a cupcake. So when you think about a recipe, it's really a system to describe what to do and, put the ingredients in the right order with the exact amount of ingredients. So you'll make a similar ingredient to the baker. But if you change the order and mix the wet ingredients with the dry too early, or different amounts of ingredients, the cupcake can, taste different, or the texture might be strange, or it might not even look like a cupcake. So it's the same with creating your safety messages. It's really important to get all these steps right, because if you want to create actionable safety messages, you need to do all of the 5 steps, not just one. So what I'm going to do is, there's so much more I can teach you about this topic, and I love breaking it all down and making it easy to understand. So I'm going to walk through the steps and teach you some of the process. Now, the first one is getting attention, which we've gone through, so I won't go into much detail there. The second one is understand. Now, this is when you have issues with messages being misunderstood or misinterpreted. Then this is actually the area you need to focus on to clear that up. And then we've got remember, which is putting safety in front of mind for all employees. Now, this is really important. And in fact, for all of these steps, what I want you to understand is that every time you put together a piece of communication, you need to incorporate these 4 steps that ensure that you're embedding all the right things, because you want to get people's attention, you want people to understand, and you also want people to remember it, because these are keys. You don't want information that goes out there that doesn't do anything, because of course you want people to take action. So you need to embed these principles into your communication to actually get change. Now, if you aren't getting behavior change, well, what you need to focus on is embedding action into what you do. This is what you need to focus on and master. Now, the way we teach the structure is through the 4-step Aura communication blueprint. Now, you can use this for anything. Toolbox talks, writing safety articles, writing safety training. Even if you're not doing safety communication, you're into other communication, you can use it for that. You can even use it for presenting and writing reports. Now, a lot of people complain to me that they can't get senior management involved with their safety initiatives. Now, I also get senior managers complain to me that their safety staff are just no good at presenting the right content at board meetings or getting buy-in from the CEO, or just not that good at asking for budget or more resources. Now, the key to being able to communicate well with a CEO and executive team is really, really critical to being a great safety influencer. I mean, if you can convince them to increase your budget and give you resources, then you can really ensure safety is always important for the company. So you can apply this system for any communication on safety, or, even just everyday corporate communication stuff. It doesn't have to be just safety, and it works for large groups, small groups, and individuals. Now, what we'll do is we'll go into each sequential step, and you can find out how to actually use this to create messages that the brain loves to process. Now, remember the training we've just gone through on attention. If you don't get people's full 100% attention, you've got nothing. No action, no behaviour change. You've got the same behaviours you've always had. Now, Gerard spoke to me a while ago that this company, this is actually a part of 5 large companies around Australia and New Zealand that needed some help with their manual handling training. It was part of a plasterboard worker sort of coalition of companies, you could say. they had some manual handling training that just wasn't getting people's attention. Now, the interesting thing is once this was launched, they actually started to notice, now this was a New Zealand company, Gerard noticed that he was actually really getting attention and engagement on a daily basis through the handbooks and posters to training information. Now, this was quite a coup because they hadn't got that before. And actually, it was only this morning that I had one of the other companies contact me to get more copies of all this, even though it's been out for a few years now, because it's still making such a difference. Because, this is the thing, if they're made really well, if you put all the right elements into it, they have longevity and you can keep reusing the same stuff. Now, one of the key skills behind creating any safety communication is that you know how to ensure that it's targeted towards your audience. And the problem is if you just write and don't consider your audience and what they need to know, while you could be great at adding surprise to your safety communication to get attention, they're still not going to listen to you. And do you know why? It's because you're not on their wavelength. They just don't trust you. So you're telling them stuff they already know. Sorry about that. Now, without knowing what makes people tick, it's kind of like starting your engine with diesel when you really need premium unleaded. You might be able to start the car with some of the attention-grabbing strategies I've shown you today, but it's not going to go very far. It's going to stall. Now, one of the things you need to know before you work out how to get attention is to focus your communication for your audience. So the first step is actually implementing 3 key communication strategies before you start writing. That's to get it really focused. And then it's all about uncovering the gaps in knowledge and really discovering the right language so that it's important. This is so important because this is how you create customized safety communication that hits the mark, which really is the key in ensuring that you're on the right wavelength. And let's talk honestly here. A lot of people are biased against safety staff. You've really got an uphill battle getting your information through because people can often automatically give you a wide berth because they think you're going to tell them off or bore them. And I want to give you an example of a client I worked with, and he's a health and safety manager at a mining company in Queensland. And he came to me for coaching and training because he found that people just ignored him when he talked about safety. So the more contractors and employees ignored him, the angrier he got. And he just tried forcing information on people, and of course that didn't work, so he got even angrier. And then he was criticizing people, and then he came to me because he was going to lose his contract. He was told that if he couldn't improve his communication, then his contract was going to expire. But, it just wasn't his job he was losing. It was also his wife, because he was so angry and frustrated at work that affected his marriage. So his style was very much about communicating failure rather than feedback. And basically no one liked him. Everyone avoided him because he was playing grumpy cop. So I've taught him some techniques to start working out what information people needed and how to gain their trust again, and how to focus on feedback, not failure, and how to coach on safety rather than command compliance. And he's been a fast learner because, well, let's face it, he had to, and thankfully he's still got his job and his wife. So the reality is you want to have a look at yourself and think, where am I talking to people and, and they're not wanting to listen, or where are people avoiding me, or, are people defensive when you question them on something, or are you finding that you're actually avoiding talking to people about safety because you feel that they don't care, and are you frustrated that you feel that you have to constantly fight for attention on safety? Now, this is exhausting. You don't want to feel like you have to fight to get heard. Now, the next part we've covered, this is about igniting the spark plug with the right fuel. And it's about, knowing how to create surprising information. So that we've covered today, so I won't go through that. And just one little thing that I didn't get time was just to go through how to incorporate visuals. Now, the next step is how to get people to understand information. Now, this part is huge, and this is crucial to getting the results that you want. Now, other than just creating simple messages, which is really important, the really important part, and I'll let you know that this is the part where I've managed to get amazing results for my clients over the last few years, is actually being able to get people to instantly feel that the information is important and they need to change. And this step's crucial for getting to step 4, taking action. And this is where I see so many companies get it wrong, even those with big budgets and communication departments. Now, Bill, you can see there on the screen that Bill was saying that they were having lots of trouble in the past with their safety communication campaigns, just not getting really any results. So they tried one of the techniques that I teach, was the cell safe technique, and they were able to start really getting clearer and easier to understand communication. Now, the interesting thing is they have 560 employees. They have 2 dedicated safety professionals that were taught these techniques. And what they found was they even produced, I found this fascinating, they produced a pamphlet to bring awareness to a particular process, which I can't remember what it was now. And they found that the supervisors found them to be so good, and the employees, that they actually used them to start training staff. So that's an amazing result there, to be able to create a pamphlet for awareness, and it's so good that you can use it for training. So that's an amazing thing to be able to do. So the cost of not being able to incorporate techniques that help people understand your information is really quite big. And whenever I look at safety training information that's not working, I often get amazed at how long it is, and they're not compelling, and no one would ever contemplate changing their poor safety behaviour after reading an essay. And it's a mistake to believe that just because you understand information, everyone else will. It's really important you know how to chunk information down so people can digest it. And what works for you doesn't necessarily work for others. And Winston Churchill said, and I love this quote, "This report, by its very length, defends itself against being read." And it's the same with your audience. No one's going to read anything you write if it looks really long and unappealing. And a common mistake is that some safety professionals feel that they need to write every single little detail they can about a procedure. But as Colin Powell, the former Secretary of State for the US, said, "I can make a decision with 30% of information. Anything more than 80% is too much." If you give people too much information, it really does stop them from making a decision. So knowing you need to write simple safety messages and being able to do this are completely 2 different things. In fact, it's the biggest area where safety professionals come to me for help. So don't make that mistake. If you can't do this on your own, you need a coach for it. So do it with me, hire someone else. The important thing here is that you need feedback from someone who knows how to make information concise. And let's be honest here, so many safety professionals write and talk about safety in such a way that can be confusing, and it obscures how that information can relate to people's lives. And the more information you give people, the more you overwhelm them and distract them, and they focus on the wrong things. So that's why your messages get misinterpreted. So here you'll learn about how to be clear and direct. And this is actually my favorite step, because I realized that this was where I was able to make such a big difference to my clients, as I said before. And an example is I worked with a very large company, and they had 450 truck drivers. Now, the truck drivers unfortunately didn't know how important their job was to the organisation. And while we were teaching them safety information, we also sort of threw in some really important information about why their job was so important. And in the end, what we were able to do is improve morale and productivity. And I was able to make these truck drivers feel instantly that what they're doing was so important, and that they did make a difference. And effectively, they were brand ambassadors for the company. So whereas before they were actually making farmers and other suppliers feel like they didn't matter, it was actually hurting the company's reputation. So we were able to turn that around and really make them enjoy their jobs more, and even make them happier. So here you'll learn how to create communication that encourages the brain to take action on your safety messages. So without it, you'll find that people will frustrate you by not doing what you say or changing their behaviour. And if you get this right, communication's a breeze, a real joy. It's kind of like having the lights switched on after years spending time in a dark cave fumbling around. It's also what's going to make you an inspiring safety leader. And it's about helping people understand complex information, so you improve your training and coaching skills. And then there are words. Now, words can actually be walls, or they can be bridges. And some words truly work against us in our communication, while others help. So we show you how to do this. Now, the third step is to remember, and this is really quite important because it enables people to know what to do, and it reduces stuff-ups, and it reminds people of what they need to do as well. And it can actually work towards reducing incidents. And we worked with the Cycling Promotion Fund, which is a not-for-profit organisation, and they've been having trouble getting into the memories of cyclists on how to ride their bikes safely on very dangerous roads. So what we did was really help them, and Rosemary here said that, it was produced in a manner that was both engaging and memorable. So what we did was produce them a series of training videos, and the benefit was that they really kind of realised quite quickly that the clarity of the messages in the videos was making such a difference. And they showed it to quite a lot of high school students around Victoria, and they found that these students, high school students, I mean teenagers, were able to recall all of the key messages. And, that was one of their key objectives that they were trying to achieve there. And, we know how hard it is to get teenagers to remember anything. So one of the mistakes that safety professionals can often make is that they really consider how to create training materials or teach safety information in a way that will actually help people remember it. Because, as I said before, you want to embed these principles into what you do to really, really make the most of the communication that you're doing. So if you get this right, you'll find that you're not micromanaging so much, and people will just know what to do. So in this step, you'll design all of your safety communications so that it always works towards helping people recall the information, and you'll choose the right words to make your message memorable. Now this really starts to bring together all of the two previous steps so that your safety communication really starts humming. Your engine is just humming along. Now the final step, the really, really important one, is action. And this is where most companies get stuck. Now, Jim came to me because he was feeling fed up with how hard it was to get senior management, to listen to him. He was getting more and more frustrated in his job, and he felt alone. And, he says that he was struggling with getting attention, not just employees, but also senior management. And, since he learnt what is one of our other systems, we teach a few systems as SellSafe, he was getting more responses and feedback. And he found that staff were thinking more and responding when before they forgot it very quickly. And, the really interesting thing that he mentioned was that communication is the start and end point of many problems. And he's now been shown new techniques that, really assisted him greatly. And, it's very lonely when you feel like you're the only one that cares about safety in your organisation. So it's wonderful that, he's not so frustrated and stressed out in his job. Action is such a crucial step, and you need to know how to ensure all of your communication inspires action. And being able to embed call to actions in all of your communication is so important if you want to get results. And this is what communication is all about, action. It's not about crossing your fingers and hoping that people will change. And, if you start getting action, you'll really be able to achieve workplace transformation. And I spoke to a company that had 6,000 staff, and they were spending a fortune on market research and communication experts, and they were getting attention on their safety communication campaigns, but absolutely no action. So, the huge investment's completely failing, and you don't want this to happen to you. Now, this is where you get people coming up to you and asking information about safety. Now, can you imagine that? Having employees actually ask your opinion on safety. If you're already getting that, that's amazing. But if you don't, this is something you want. I mean, this is beautiful. This is where the rubber hits the road and you can start coasting down the highway, wind in your hair, knowing that you're making a difference. So here you'll learn how to revamp your safety communication materials by learning and mastering a communication template. And you'll create safety content that really speaks to your employees and reduces staff frustration as well. And this is where you also take action. And this is all, it involves a lot of group coaching so that you get to practice and get feedback on improving your safety communication writing. Because the truth is, we can never reach our full potential without our own coach. And that's why every great athlete has a coach, why top CEOs have advisors, and why great actors have a director to bring out their best, like Jeffrey Rush. There's so much more to this topic that I can teach you in 90 minutes. So if this program really resonates with you, I'd like to invite you to speak personally with me to see exactly what you need to get the best results. Now, this is my invitation on how to work with me further, and I promised I'd give that to you. So let me tell you how to do that if you want to do that with me. Now, I love having these discussions about this topic, and on this call, we actually will discuss how you can take this information to the next level to start producing engaging safety communication. So you want to come with me to this special page and check it out. It's digicast.com.au/strategy. Now, if you scroll through, there's a form, and you're welcome to fill that out now if you like. Now what we'll do is we'll explore your biggest challenges and what could be stopping you from getting results. And you're welcome to take your boss or manager into the call as well. There's no pressure or obligation to buy, although you might decide you want more support to get the results you want. I'd love to see how I can serve you and see if it's the right fit for us to work together. So if that's for you, go ahead and apply. Space is limited. And I want to tell you about a special bonus offer. Now remember at the start of the webinar I mentioned the free bonus. bonus. And I also mentioned how important it is to know how to be able to request extra money or resources to thrive in your job. Now, what we've found is that a lot of safety professionals often stumble when they need to ask for more budget. So whether it's a new safety initiative or to get more training to improve their skills. So based on feedback from customers, we've created some special training. So as action is so important to what you do, because remember what I said earlier, if you want people to take action, you need to get action. I like to reward those that take action with a special bonus. So as a very special fast action bonus, the first 30 people to talk to me during a safety influence strategy session will receive a complimentary requesting budget, how to get your organisation to invest in your success, valued at $149. Now it's a 55-minute online training session with a worksheet on how to request money or resources from your company. And it walks you through step by step on how you can ask your company to reimburse you for investing yourself in this program or to get extra budget to do the things you need to do. Now, it could be a flex schedule where you're working from home part of the time, could be for more holiday time, could be for a raise or promotion, you name it. Just plug it into the worksheet and come up with a tight game plan for making the ask. Now, I can't guarantee that you'll get reimbursed, but using this bonus drastically ups your chances because it shows you how you can ask for it in a way that will benefit both the person you're asking as well as yourself. And it shows you how you can make the ask from a place of strength. So this will be a great resource for you, whether or not you decide to go further with the Fast Track Your Safety Communication Results program. Now, those who've undertaken a safety influence strategy session with me before have often found that they get breakthroughs in areas that are really keeping them stuck in ways that they didn't know. And I had one safety professional realize that he was actually focusing on the wrong things. He was focusing on really getting the process written down, but he wasn't doing anything to actually inspire people to change. And he wasn't able to see that on his own. I had to point that out to him. So I want to underline that this strategy session is complimentary. The only investment is your time. So don't hesitate if your intuition is saying sign up for a strategy session with Claire. Just do that now. Don't put it on your to-do list. And only sign up if you are committed to changing and showing up. These sessions book up fast and I can't talk to everyone. And I'm actually going to say now, because this is the 5th live session that I've done, I've got the last one tomorrow, and then this will be opened up. And once it gets opened up, then there will be a big rush. So you want to book first before you miss out, because I do go on a first serve first basis. Now, if you're one of those who don't want to talk and you just want to see what this training is all about, well, then you're welcome to actually just have a look at the website now. So if you want to go to digicast.com.au/sellsafe, there's some information on the Fast Track Your Safety Communication Results. I've just remembered, don't download the brochure yet. I haven't updated it yet. It's going to be updated today. So hold off on the brochure download, but you're welcome to have a look through the rest of the information. Okay, what's the time? All right, I've got a couple of minutes left. So what I want to do is just quickly go through a safety communication renovation. Now, I actually love looking at safety information that people have put together and then provide feedback on ways to improve it. Now, this is just a really quick thing I've actually just thrown this in yesterday. Yes, I spent my Sunday updating the webinar and changing a few things, because that's what I do. But I just want to give you a few hints on how this piece of communication can be improved, because I think you'll find it quite interesting. Now, I'm just going to give you a few little hints. Now, the first thing I want to do is actually just give you information about what I like about this. I like the fact it's got pictures. I like the fact that it's got a lot of white space, so it makes it really easy to read. I also like the font. I think that's a nice font to use, friendly, and also easy to read as well. And there are a couple of things that I would do to change this. The first thing is get rid of Eddie the elephant right at the top. There's no point in having cartoon figures in your safety communication. It's a distraction, and it's very hard for a human to actually feel any kind of internal representation of a cartoon animal. A cartoon human maybe, but you've got to do a lot of work really creating that connection to the cartoon. And I also believe that make sure your load is properly restrained to avoid an accident incident. I love how that's worded. I think that's beautiful, but really that's a call to action that should be used down at the bottom. On its own at the top, it's not really, it won't draw people in. In terms of being surprising, I love these photos. I think they're great. I love the croc and I love the water tank on the ute. If anything, they could be used in just one of the photos. Probably two is a bit much, and you might want to even do two different ones with one with each photo. But that photo definitely has to be bigger, because if this is, say, in a kitchen, up on a notice board, you want to attract people's attention. So you want to make that as big as possible. And then in terms of how it's written, you want to have a headline that's got a really good, really information about the main message and what you want people to do. And you also want a sub-headline there as well, just to give more information. And then with the major content, particularly the list in the second paragraph, you can see there, you'd want to put that in dot points. Whenever you've got lists, do it in dot points to make it easy for people. The last two slogans to me are a bit meaningless. I'd get rid of that and instead end it with a call to action that tells people what behaviour you want. Okay, so what I've just done there very quickly is this is just an example of what I teach my students in the Fast Track Your Safety Communication Results training program. So this is where you get feedback on your work, and this is really the only way to really know how to tweak your campaigns and even see what other people are creating. Now remember, if you want people to take action, you want to take action. So if you want to improve your career, make sure you take action. Now, as Mahatma Gandhi said, you must be the change you want to see in the world. And, I've worked with a lot of safety leaders over the years, and many have felt that they could do this alone and try and work out what to do. And they've come back to me a year, 6 months later, and show me what they've been creating, because they're frustrated that they're not getting the results they want and they're not getting behaviour change. But it's really hard to improve your results if you're not following a proven system. Now, I don't want that for you, the frustration, the waste of time and resources. And I know how busy you are and how important your job is. So not being able to get ahead in your career or being the change agent you want is really frustrating. It sucks. So you don't want to waste another second writing safety communication that no one wants to read. It's a waste of your time, and it does feel demoralizing. So if any of this resonates with you, sign up for a safety influence strategy session now before the spots fill up and the bonus offer runs out. And just as a reminder, to make it easier for all of you, I did mention that I would give you an example of all the commercials that I was talking about. If you scroll down to that strategy influence page that we've been looking at, you will find it all listed at the bottom of the page. And if you're interested, you can also find out more about my book, Transform Your Safety Communication. There are two websites. There's a digicast.com.au/safety-communication-book website, and it's also got its own dedicated book website at safetycommunicationbook.com. Well, thanks so much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed hearing about the 3 secrets for creating attention-grabbing safety messages just as much as I've enjoyed preparing this webinar. So remember, sign up for the strategy session for you if that seems like the sort of thing you'd be interested in. And if you do, I look forward to speaking to you then. And for everyone else, thanks for joining into the call and happy communicating.